There comes a time in every soul's journey when the schemes of others wrap around you like a web of shadows. You felt their whispers, you sensed their glances, you carried the heavy weight of their hidden agenda. It was not spoken to your face, but it lived in the silence of their betrayal. They thought you were blind to it, but God was not, and while you wrestled with sleepless nights and unanswered questions, He was already preparing a table in the presence of those who conspired against you. You see, the story of your life is not written by their deceit, nor determined by their ambition to harm you. It is written by the author of truth. The same hands that sculpted the mountains and set the stars in place are the hands that guard your destiny. And when those hands move, no hidden plan, no secret betrayal, no whispered scheme can stand. They may plot in darkness, but the light of God exposes every hidden intention. What they meant to bury you, God will use to raise you higher. Think for a moment. How many times did you sit in silence, feeling the sting of words never spoken to you directly, but aimed to destroy your character? How many times did you feel abandoned when the very ones you trusted became the architects of your pain? Yet here you are, still breathing, still standing, because what they failed to calculate was this. Hurting you was not just an act against you, it was an act against the one who called you His own. And God does not take lightly when His children are harmed. Imagine the scene. They gathered in secret, certain of their victory. Their smiles hid daggers, their kindness was a mask, their words rehearsed like actors on a stage. They believed their performance flawless. But behind the curtain of eternity, God watched. He saw every silent plan, every false smile, every step they took to harm you. And just as easily as the wind scatters chaff, He scattered their designs. Their hidden agenda became their public downfall. And the irony, the exquisite irony, is that in trying to strip you of honor, they stripped themselves of dignity. In seeking to cost you everything, they lost everything. Their betrayal was the seed of their collapse, because when you touch what belongs to God, you touch fire. The very pain they inflicted upon you became the measure of their own undoing. Do not mistake this truth. Their downfall was not your doing. You did not lift a hand nor raise a voice. You let God be God, and because you trusted Him, He turned what was whispered in darkness into a testimony of His justice in daylight. This is not about vengeance. It is about divine order. It is about a God who says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." It is about a God who makes wrong things right in His perfect timing. So lift your head. Do not let their betrayal define your worth. Do not let their failure to love you convince you that you were unworthy of love. Their collapse is not your celebration, but your confirmation that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The cost of hurting you was too high for them to bear, because God Himself stepped into the story. And now, as you look back, you will see what once seemed like a curse was in fact a protection. You will see that their hidden agenda only revealed the steadfastness of God's hand over your life. They lost what they thought they could keep, because what was never theirs to hold was sacred in God's eyes. You. There is something deeply unsettling about hidden things. The whispers behind closed doors, the subtle glances exchanged across a room, the laughter that feels like a knife turned inward. You have felt it, haven't you? That quiet ache in your spirit when you realized that not everyone who stood beside you wished you well. Some carried intentions so carefully veiled that even their smiles looked convincing. Yet, while you struggled to understand, God was never blind to any of it. He is the one who searches the heart and discerns the motives of every soul. Where our eyes fail, His vision pierces. Where our ears hear, silence His presence detects the plodding of darkness. Think of the comfort in that truth. You did not need to hear their conversations to know what they said, for God heard every word. You did not need to catch them in the act, for God saw every step. No agenda is hidden from him, no conspiracy escapes his notice. Scripture tells us that he knows even the thoughts before they are formed, the intentions before they are spoken. So while you walked uncertain, he walked certain. While you felt abandoned, he was present. While you felt confused, he was already aligning his justice. This is where trust becomes vital, because in the moment of betrayal, you may have wondered why he did not immediately intervene. You may have cried out, "Lord, why do you allow them to succeed in secret?" But God, in his infinite wisdom, does not rush. He lets the schemes of the wicked unravel by their own thread. He allows their plots to ripen, so when the fruit falls, it reveals the rottenness within. What is hidden for a season is never hidden forever. Sooner or later the mask slips, and the truth shines through. And when it does, it is undeniable. It cannot be twisted, cannot be disguised. Consider how often the human heart longs for exposure, to see the wrongdoer revealed, to see their secrets uncovered. Yet God goes further. He not only sees, he orchestrates. He turns their secrecy into a stage, their hidden agenda into a spotlight that reveals who they truly are. He does not simply expose them, he uses their very actions to testify of his justice. Their own steps become the rope by which they entangle themselves. They may think they are clever, but in reality they are walking into the very snare they laid for you. And what of you in this story? You felt their words sting even before they spoke them aloud. You sensed the atmosphere shift even when the room was filled with laughter. Your soul carried the bruise of their intentions. Yet God was whispering into the depths of your spirit, "Be still. I see it all. Nothing is hidden from me." That is why you survived the silent storm. That is why, though they plotted, you were not destroyed, because the one who counts the hairs on your head was already guarding your path. Think of a child walking through a forest, unaware of the wolves lurking in the shadows. The child may not see the danger, but the father walking beside them sees everything. That father's presence is the reason the wolves never strike. So it is with you and God. You walked through situations where you did not even know how deeply they wanted to harm you. Yet the Father saw, and he shielded you. He let their whispers echo, but never let their schemes triumph. This truth should bring you peace. Their secrecy was powerless against his sovereignty. What they hid from you, they could not hide from him. Every motive, every scheme, every hidden agenda, they were all laid bare before his throne, and in his time he ensured that what was whispered in shadows was shouted from rooftops. He turned the unseen into the undeniable, and he did it so that you would know you were never alone. When someone sets their heart on hurting you, they believe they are targeting only flesh and bone. They think their words cut you alone, their betrayal wounds you alone, their actions diminish only your value. But this is where they are mistaken. To strike at you is not to strike at you alone. It is to strike at the one who has placed his mark upon you. You are not an orphan wandering this earth unprotected. You belong to God, and he does not stand idle while his children are mocked, belittled, or betrayed. Hurting you is an act against the very one who spoke creation into being. And there is a cost for touching what is sacred. This is why Scripture says, "Touch not my anointed, and do my prophets no harm." Those words were not written as poetry, but as warning. They echo across eternity as a declaration that God's people are not to be toyed with. When others conspired to hurt you, They underestimated who stood behind you. They thought you were small, defenseless, easy to break. But what they failed to see was the covering over your life. They did not realize that when they pierced you, heaven took notice. Every tear you shed became evidence before God's throne. Every pain recorded in his book, every wound presented as a case that demanded his justice. Think of it this way. A king's child walking through the streets may appear ordinary to strangers. They may even be vulnerable to insult or attack by those who do not know who the child belongs to. But the moment someone raises a hand against that child, they are no longer dealing with the child. They are dealing with the kingdom, with the throne, with the king himself. That is the reality of your life. You may look ordinary in the eyes of those who sought to harm you, but the moment they laid their hands on you in cruelty, the moment they schemed to break you, they crossed into holy territory. They were no longer fighting you. They were fighting God. And who can fight God and win? Who can strike at his child and walk away untouched? The cost is always greater than they expect. That is why their betrayal unraveled their own lives. That is why their deceit became their downfall. They thought they were strong enough to handle the consequences, but they were not contending with you. They were contending with the Lord of hosts. To harm you was to ignite a battle they could never win. You may have thought at times, why am I the one suffering while they continue unpunished? But God's silence in the moment was not absence, it was patience. It was his way of giving them space to turn back, to repent, to lay down their weapons. But they chose pride, and pride always precedes destruction. And when the destruction came, it was not your hand that delivered it. It was his. He let them feel the full weight of what it means to offend his child. There is a holy mystery in this. God does not need to strike with thunder or split the skies to show his displeasure. Often, he simply lets people fall into the pit they dug for you. He allows the bitterness they directed toward you to poison their own lives. He permits their schemes to collapse upon their own heads. And as they sit in the ruins of what they tried to build against you, they are forced to recognize, hurting you cost them everything. And perhaps you need to hear this. Their actions did not diminish your value. They did not weaken your purpose. They did not alter the destiny God wrote for you before the foundation of the world. If anything, their attempt to harm you only confirmed that you carry something worth attacking. The enemy does not waste his time on the empty. He goes after the chosen, the anointed, the ones carrying light, and though it hurt, though it broke pieces of you, it could not break the hand of God that surrounds you. So lift your spirit. Remember this truth. Their offense was not against you alone, but against the God who protects you. And when God rises to defend his own, he does not rise halfway. He rises fully, completely, until justice is done and his child is restored. The irony of evil is that it carries within itself the seed of its own collapse. When people crafted their hidden agenda against you, they believed they were clever architects of your downfall. They whispered in shadows, plotting moves as if unseen, weaving webs of deceit with confidence that their design was flawless. But what they failed to grasp is a truth as old as creation. Wickedness never secures victory. It secures ruin. Their very attempt to destroy you became the blueprint of their destruction. Every hidden plan, every scheme they sowed was a seed, and seeds do not remain silent forever. They grow. What they sowed in malice, they reaped in despair. What they planted in betrayal, they harvested in loss. For God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. And while they were busy burying seeds of deceit in the soil of your life, They did not realize that God was turning that soil back upon them. Their agenda was not a weapon in their hands. It was a mirror reflecting back their own corruption. Think of this. When Joseph's brothers sold him into slavery, they thought they were erasing him from their story. They thought their secret plan guaranteed his silence. Yet, years later, that very act became the stage for their own humbling. The brother they betrayed stood as the ruler they had to bow before. Their secret agenda carried the seed of their own brokenness. And so it is in your story. The very betrayal meant to silence you became the loudest testimony of their shame. This is the mystery of divine justice. God does not need to invent punishment. He simply allows people to walk out the consequences of their own choices. Their schemes against you became snares for their own feet. The pit they dug swallowed them. The net they spread caught them. Their hidden agenda was not your destruction, it was their undoing. And it was not because you sought revenge, but because the law of God's order cannot be broken. The universe bends toward justice because its creator is just. And so, while you wept in silence, they boasted in secret. While you prayed for strength, they celebrated their cleverness. Yet, in unseen places, their plans were decaying. The very thing they thought would elevate them became the stone that dragged them down. Hurting you did not lift them, it emptied them. Betraying you did not secure their future, it fractured it. There is a kind of poetic justice in how God works. He does not need your voice to accuse them, their actions accuse themselves. He does not need your hands to fight them, their own deeds are the instruments of their collapse. The more they schemed, the deeper they dug. The more they plotted, the heavier the weight upon their shoulders. And when the time was full, when the fruit of their hidden agenda ripened, it was bitter to their own mouths. You may not have seen it immediately, but slowly, surely, their lives began to reflect the corruption they had sown. Relationships fractured, trust dissolved, peace fled from them. The joy they once had turned hollow, because you cannot sow destruction into another's life without reaping destruction in your own. It is the divine law. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And when they violated that law, they set fire not to your house, but to their own. Take comfort in this. Their secret agenda was never greater than God's sovereignty. What they planned in whispers could never outshout his command. They thought their darkness could hide them, but the light of his justice reached them. And in the end they discovered that what they thought would destroy you cost them everything. So stand in peace. Let their story be a warning written not in anger, but in truth. No hidden plan prospers when it is raised against one protected by God. Their agenda did not end you, it ended them. Their plotting was not your curse, it was their undoing. When we are hurt, betrayed, or abandoned, the first impulse of the human heart is to cry for revenge. We want them to feel what we felt. We want them to taste the bitterness they fed us, to drown in the pain they poured over us. That longing is not foreign. It comes from the ache of injustice. But God, in his infinite wisdom, does not work from the place of vengeance, as man understands it. His justice is not about settling scores. It is about restoring balance, re-establishing order, and revealing his sovereignty in the timing only he can choose. This is why, in those moments when you were crying out, "Why, Lord? Why are they getting away with it?" the heavens seemed silent. The silence was not absence, it was patience. God does not act in haste, because haste belongs to man. His justice unfolds with precision at the moment when all things align for maximum truth. If he were to strike instantly, their downfall might look like coincidence, but when he waits, when he lets the threads of their choices weave a full picture, no one can deny that the unraveling was his work. You see, God's justice is never impulsive. It is not an emotional outburst. It is divine order. Just as the planets orbit in rhythm and the seasons arrive in their due time, his justice manifests in perfection. He is not interested in merely punishing those who hurt you. He is interested in demonstrating to all that he governs the affairs of men. That is why he waits until their pride has reached its peak, until their schemes have matured, until the mask they wear cannot stay fastened. At that moment, his timing comes, and the collapse is undeniable. Think of Pharaoh in Egypt. He oppressed the people of God with cruelty, hardened his heart against their cries, and thought his power eternal. God could have destroyed him in an instant, but he did not. He allowed Pharaoh's arrogance to rise so high that when the waters of the Red Sea finally drowned his army, there was no question. This was not the work of man. This was the hand of the Almighty. Pharaoh's downfall became a testimony of divine order. In the same way, those who hurt you were permitted to rise for a season, but only so that their fall would reveal the justice of God in its fullness. And perhaps you wondered why God allowed you to suffer while they laughed. But hear this: your suffering was not wasted. It became part of the stage upon which his justice would be revealed. Without your pain there would be no testimony. Without your trial there would be no triumph. And when the moment of justice arrived, it was not merely about you being vindicated. It was about his name being glorified through your story. God's justice does not come early, nor does it arrive late. It comes right on time, his time. And though it may test your patience, it is this very timing that makes his justice undeniable. When those who betrayed you lose the very things they thought they had secured, when the relationships they used to conspire crumble, when the peace they sacrifice vanishes from their lives, it is not random. It is order. It is God showing you and them that every action has consequence, every wound has a cost, and every betrayal has a reckoning. And here is the deeper truth. His justice is never about destruction alone. It is about revelation. He exposes what is hidden. He dismantles what is false. He tears down what is unjust, and in its place he restores. He is not satisfied with simply bringing them low. He raises you up. He is not interested in humiliating them for sport. He is interested in restoring balance so that all who witness will say, "Surely the Lord is just." This is why you must resist the temptation to fight back in your own strength. Your revenge would only satisfy you for a moment, but his justice satisfies eternity. His timing is not only about their downfall, but about your rise. And when he moves, it becomes a story too perfect to deny. The betrayers fell, the betrayed was lifted, and the hand of God was evident in it all. So do not despise his timing. Do not mistake his patience for neglect. When he acts, it will be clear, and when he restores, it will be complete. His justice is not about revenge, it is about divine order, written in time by the one who rules eternity. It is a strange and holy mystery. The very thing meant to destroy you becomes the instrument of your strength. The betrayal that was designed to silence you gives you a louder voice. The rejection that was intended to diminish your worth becomes the proof of your immeasurable value. What they meant for your harm, God takes into his hands and reshapes into the very testimony that will one day set others free. This truth is woven throughout the history of God's people. Joseph's brothers cast him into a pit, then sold him into slavery, convinced they had erased him from the story. Yet the pit was not his grave, it was his gateway. The slavery was not his end, it was his preparation. What they meant for his harm became the very testimony of God's hand upon his life. And years later, when Joseph stood as a ruler in Egypt, he could look at his betrayers and say, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Your life carries the same truth. The betrayal you endured was not wasted. The lies they told about you were not the end. The loss you suffered was not meaningless. God has been weaving every strand of pain into a tapestry of purpose. What they used as a weapon, he has turned into a witness, and the scars you carry today are not signs of defeat, they are evidence of survival, proof that God's hand held you through the fire. Think about this. Testimonies are not born in comfort. They are forged in suffering, shaped in valleys, birthed in nights of tears. You would not have a story to tell if you had never been wounded. You would not carry wisdom if you had never been broken. And while they thought their cruelty would leave you empty, it left you full of something far greater: resilience, strength, faith, and the undeniable presence of God in your life. Even now your story speaks. There are people who will one day hear your journey and find courage in it. They will see how you endured betrayal, how you survived the storm, and they will realize that if God did it for you, he can do it for them too. Your testimony is not just for you. It is for those who need hope, for those who are walking through their own valley of pain. And here is the beauty of God's work. He does not merely cancel the harm. They cannot be undone. Instead, he transforms it. He takes the ashes of what was burned and brings forth beauty. He takes the broken pieces of what was shattered and crafts them into something new. He takes the lies that were spoken against you and uses them to reveal the truth of who you are in him. This is why the very people who tried to harm you will one day be forced to witness your elevation. Not because you sought revenge, but because God delights in turning harm into testimony. You may have thought for a time that their actions ruined your life. You may have cried, "Lord, I will never recover from this." But look at you now. You are still standing stronger than before. The fact that you survived what was meant to destroy you is already the testimony, and the longer you live, the clearer it will become. Not only did you survive, but you were transformed. The harm that was aimed at you became the soil where faith took root, where endurance grew, where your spirit deepened. Remember, your testimony is not just about survival. It is about triumph. It is about declaring, "I was wounded, but I was not destroyed. I was broken, but I was not abandoned. I was betrayed, but I was not forgotten." And when you speak those words, heaven echoes them, because God himself turned your harm into victory. So walk boldly. Do not hide your scars. Do not silence your story. For every pain that once crushed you has now become the voice of your testimony. And what they intended for harm will forever stand as proof of God's faithfulness in your life. There is a truth written in the fabric of eternity. No weapon formed against the children of God will prosper. It is not a suggestion, not a hopeful phrase. It is a divine decree. This does not mean that weapons will never be formed. They will. People will plot, betray, and conspire. They will sharpen words like blades, weave lies like snares, and gather together in dark corners with strategies to break you. But the promise is this: though the weapon may be forged, it will not prevail. And when their weapons shatter in their own hands, when their plots collapse around them, it becomes the living proof of that promise. Think of how many times you wondered, "Lord, will I survive this?" Their words pierced you, their betrayal cut deep. Their schemes seemed powerful enough to strip you of everything. Yet here you are. Their weapons did not prosper, their plans did not succeed, and their collapse became a loud testimony that God's word stands unbroken. It is easy to believe in the promise of God when life is peaceful, but it is in the storm that the promise shines brightest. When you were walking through betrayal, when lies were spoken as though they were truth, when people turned their backs on you, you questioned how long you could endure. But God was watching, and heaven was declaring, "This will not prosper." You may have felt the sting of the arrow, but it could not pierce your destiny. You may have felt the fire of the trial, but it could not consume your soul. And though you were bruised, you were not broken. Now look at the ones who tried to destroy you. What became of their weapons? The lies they told fractured their own reputation. The schemes they devised tangled their own feet. The betrayal they thought would elevate them became the curse that dragged them down. Their collapse was not random, it was the fulfillment of divine promise. In trying to forge a weapon against you, they built their own destruction. There is a sobering truth here. God does not simply stop the weapon from prospering, He allows it to demonstrate its futility. He lets the schemes grow, lets the betrayers think they are winning, lets the darkness seem powerful. And then, at the right moment, He shows that all of it was powerless against His hand. Their collapse becomes a sermon louder than any words. You cannot harm God's chosen and escape unscathed. Think of David and Goliath. The giant stood armored, weapon in hand, certain of his victory. David stood small, with nothing but a sling and a stone. To all appearances, the weapon in Goliath's hand was unstoppable. But it was not the size of the weapon that mattered. It was the presence of God. And in a moment, the giant's own strength became his downfall. His collapse testified that no weapon, no matter how mighty it appears, prospers against those whom God defends. The same pattern has echoed in your life. Their betrayal may have looked like triumph, but it was short-lived. Their cruelty may have seemed overwhelming, but it was fragile. For when God is your shield, even the sharpest sword breaks. Their collapse is the evidence. It shows that you were never unprotected. It proves that though they fought against you, they fought in vain. And let this truth sink deep. Their downfall is not merely about their destruction. It is about your confirmation. It confirms that the promise over your life is unshakable. It confirms that you are not at the mercy of their intentions, but held in the hands of a sovereign God. It confirms that your story cannot be rewritten by betrayal, only by grace. So when you recall the collapse of those who tried to harm you, do not gloat. Instead, let it remind you of this eternal truth. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. Their ruin is not your revenge, it is your reassurance. It is the evidence that God's word cannot fail, that His protection cannot be broken, and that His justice cannot be denied. There is a sacredness about your life that no betrayal, no lie, no hidden agenda can erase. When God sets His seal upon you, it is not a fragile mark that fades with time or with the cruelty of others. It is eternal. Those who betrayed you thought their actions could strip you of value. They believed their rejection could define your worth, that their silence could diminish your significance, that their cruelty could rewrite your story. But here is the truth. You are sacred in God's eyes, and nothing they did has the power to remove His favor from your life. This is why their loss became inevitable. In trying to take from you, they lost themselves. In seeking to diminish you, they diminished their own dignity. In raising their hands against one beloved by God, they wrote their own undoing. Their collapse stands not just as justice, but as a reminder to you that you never lost favor. You never ceased to matter. You never stood outside the gaze of your Father. Think of the temple in Jerusalem, holy and untouchable, set apart for God's presence. To defile it was to invite judgment. To dishonor it was to provoke God himself. In the same way, your life is a temple. God has made his dwelling within you. You are not common, not ordinary, not disposable. To betray you, to wound you, to trample your trust was to profane what God calls sacred, and there is always a cost when the sacred is dishonored. That cost became their loss. And here is where you must find peace. Their betrayal did not change your identity. It did not strip you of God's calling. It did not alter the love he has set upon you. Favor is not something man can give, and so it is not something man can take away. They may walk away, they may lie, they may tear at your name. But the hand of God remains steady. His blessing does not depend on their approval. His plan does not rest on their loyalty. His favor does not waver when others fail you. Their loss then becomes more than just an ending for them. It becomes a mirror for you. It reflects back the truth that you are untouchable in God's design. They may have believed they held power over your destiny, but they were mistaken. The betrayal they thought would end you became the revelation that you cannot be ended by the hands of men. You are sacred, and sacred things are preserved. Remember how many times you questioned yourself because of their treatment. You wondered, am I really worth anything if they could hurt me so easily? Am I really loved if they could discard me so quickly? But the collapse of their schemes answers that question loudly. Yes, you are worth everything. Yes, you are loved beyond measure. Yes, you are held by a God whose favor is not shaken by human failure. Their loss is the evidence that God takes you seriously, that heaven does not ignore your pain, that your tears matter. And think of this. The favor of God is not merely a shield to protect you. It is a fountain that cannot stop flowing. While they lose what they tried to keep, you will gain what they could never steal. While they sit in the ruins of their agenda, you will rise in the radiance of his grace. Their downfall testifies not only to the danger of betraying what is sacred, but to the unstoppable nature of divine favor. You cannot be hidden, you cannot be erased, you cannot be diminished, because you are his. So lift your spirit today. Let their loss remind you of your worth. Let their collapse remind you of your sacredness. Let their failure remind you that God's favor over your life is not fragile. It is unbreakable, untouchable, eternal. No betrayal can remove it. No rejection can diminish it. No cruelty can erase it. You are beloved. You are chosen. You are sacred, and nothing they did could ever change that. So now the story is clear. What began in whispers of betrayal has ended in the thunder of God's justice. What they thought they hid in shadows was already laid bare before the eyes of the Almighty. Their agenda, secret and cruel, became the seed of their own destruction. Their decision to wound you was not simply an attack on flesh and blood. It was an offense against the God who calls you his own, and no one strikes at what is sacred without paying the price. Look back and see how every moment unfolded with divine ardor. Their weapons were sharp, but they did not prosper. Their schemes were elaborate, but they collapsed. Their laughter was loud, but it faded into silence. And through it all, you endured, not because you were strong in yourself, but because you were surrounded by a strength greater than yourself. The God who walks with you never left, never abandoned, never forgot. What of you? You came through the storm with more than scars. You came through with a testimony. Their betrayal became your proof of God's faithfulness. Their rejection became the stage for your elevation. Their collapse became the evidence that his promises are unbreakable. What they meant for harm has now become the very story that proclaims his glory. Let their downfall remind you of this eternal truth. You are sacred in God's eyes. His favor is not fragile, not dependent on the approval of man, not shaken by betrayal. No rejection can erase it, no cruelty can diminish it, no agenda can overturn it. You are chosen, and because you are chosen, you are protected. So stand tall. Do not look back with bitterness, but with awe. For the very fact that you are still here, still breathing, still rising, is proof enough that their plans failed. God turned their hidden agenda into public failure. Hurting you cost them everything, but it could not cost you your destiny. And now your life stands as a living testimony that the one who guards you neither slumbers nor sleeps, and his justice, though patient, is perfect and complete.